want to make sure that this presentation is interactive because I was talking to Eduardo here earlier, and he's a big enterprise agile coach, and he helped us at PTC as well early on in our agile journey. I've done this for many years, hence this grayness here. But agile transformations are very hard, and I'm speaking with structure and Jira and those platforms here, but none of these platforms can solve for an agile journey. Yep. What is important is that, and I'll speak to a couple of tips and tricks or things which you can do as you really start thinking of agile journeys. And an agile transformation is at least a 5-year transformation. Yes. There'll be many false starts, and in most companies. And I was telling Eduardo this, that I'm willing to bet a month's paycheck on this with anyone who says it's less than that, done correctly. And Pat brought up some really interesting points, and we had never talked before this. So I'm really impressed that we are on the same page with this. I'm going to show you 3 slides, and we can take a pause at the end of each slide to discuss these 3 models. And then I will just show you one Jira slide. We don't use structure, we don't use any other tools in Jira. We use clean, pure, native Jira in our Agile. And not to say that you can't use structure or you can't use others, but we chose, and this is where Thad's thing came in, let's do Agile well, let's do Jira well before we jump into anything else. And that's really important, and that itself, and I'm speaking, and thank you for coming to PTC. I work here. Would love to host you, and thanks everyone for bringing the wine and the good stuff. But when we started our agile journey here, we did not ourselves realize that it would be so hard. And we're like the technology hub, 3,000 developers kind of stuff, and in the IT organization I'm there, 200 of us, and distributed teams, so that's some context behind. And we did one very bad start where we thought we were doing agile very well, but it was completely waterfall cloaked in agile terms. And that happens, and even though we were talking all agile thinking, all agile talk, we all were thinking waterfall behind the scenes. And it's a very interesting time when most companies are doing that as well. So it's very hard to find good agile companies, and tools help. So we did a couple of things. We just ran our biggest program ever in scaled agile. So big that we are a public firm, almost $2 billion, and we do a lot of work in the finance. Our basic business is building technology and software, but because we're public and with such large compliance needs, we had literally 10 months to finish one of our biggest compliance projects called ASC 606, which really meant that if we were to stay a compliant public firm, we had to finish this, right? So for folks who are in the finance, it's a subscription journey which you need to do when you go from licensing product to subscription products. Like Jira in the cloud is subscription versus license. It's a different way of managing your finance, right? So we did that, and we did that completely using an agile method, and we scaled it. So I'm going to stop there. Can someone just cue me when I'm getting to like 7 or 8 minutes, Greg or Tim, please? So let me see, how do I go to the next? There you go. So some of you are probably doing this. Some of you have seen this, some of you have not seen this at all. It's what's called the top left, it's called SAFE. And it's one of the 3 or 4 very well-known scaled agile methodologies. And on the structure, you know, grab bags there, I saw on the back you guys have brought in the, you know, the SAFe pattern. SAFe is a scaled agile pattern. I will not go into this. I can speak for 2 days on SAFe because I'm certified on SAFe also. But essentially, it's think of how many of you have known of SAFe or perfect? So most of them. So I'm not going to at all even go more into it. But you know, if you have 7, 8, 10 teams, the way you float, there's some goodness in SAFe, you know, and you can do SAFe without using structure as well, or you know, like Pat said, you can implement very core functions of SAFe without actually using structure or anything. But as long as you do Agile and Jira well, you can do this, and I'll show you how in the end it translates to. There's a lot of people work on this side, which needs to be done, and that is the major amount of work which needs to be done. I think Michael, right? You talked about stories early on with subtasks, right?
Yep.
Did I get your name right?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. We had huge issues, and the biggest tip I can give you is a very standard way of splitting story, a story split pattern. It's called Spider. We had like 6-hour sessions with 20 people, and splitting, it was like splitting hairs as we called it, but it was splitting stories, and that helps a lot. And again, like Tad said, don't do subtasks. If I have to do subtasks, I'll just do it. But what I have to always tell someone is, how do you decide when you get home or when you go home, when you finish your work? That's a days of work. That's a unit of work. If you want to split that into morning, after breakfast, before lunch, before afternoon snack, is 3 tasks, subtasks.
Yeah.
But story splitting
I agree.
is.
I mean, that's the way that I've always approached it. That I run a multi-tenant environment, and one of the teams was heavily making use of subtasks, and I had a long conversation with them trying to explain that while they could do that, maybe doing that wasn't quite the best use of Jira's toolkit.
Yeah, and then, you know, I came from, Ron and I were talking, we sell our own product called Integrity, which is if you think of Jira on like 2000 steroids. It's used for like aeronautics and like very large software and manufacturing, ALM type. And you can go nuts with that. You know, you can do that Jira, but it is not, because you'll get into a lot of estimation issues when you do subtasks. So, you know, that's, but you know, so I just wanted to put there as a way of talking about it. We used a mix of SAFe and DAD, as we call it. DAD is Disciplined Agile Delivery. I'm not a huge fan of it because it smells of waterfall a lot. And you know, I shouldn't dish waterfall. Waterfall is good, and I'm saying that aloud. Waterfall is good. If you do something, do it well, whether it's waterfall or agile. You know, the Hoover Dam was built on waterfall. We went to the moon by waterfall, so it can't be that bad, right? But do it well. It's just that in these times, you know, we've forgotten the basic tenets of waterfall, and that's why we get stuck. And that's why you can see these sort of phases. But you know, and something which you know, Eduardo and his team, when they came on board, they talked about vision roadmap, and I had forgotten about that from my early agile days, and that is very important. You know, you have a vision for the project, you have a mission vision, and then you build a roadmap, go down to epics, stories, so you can do that, and that's very important to do. And then you can, you know, I was talking to someone, I forget, where they had multiple, oh, you as well. They had multiple ways in which they release products, 5, 6 different environments. So it's very hard to go from construction to production. And to do that every 2 weeks is extremely hard. So, so think of that. But we use Jira Cloud. Jira Cloud has, so we have finalized on a thinking of done versus releasable. And that's very important. So if you are saying you're done, really go back to the original agile thinking. It's done means it's releasable. If it's not done and releasable, it's not done. Don't put it in done. And be very anal about it. It's not done if it's not done. Releasing, and so that is where you go into the safe pattern, where the safe pattern, a really good tenet of safe is develop on a cadence, release anytime. So you develop on a 2-week or 3-week, that your cadence is, but your DevOps should be so good that you can release anytime. Decouple that. It's extremely important, and that is where these two clash. Where you see that you're developing. That's why I don't like that so much. And that's why it smells of waterfall, and then you sort of do a production. However, what we did was, we did pre-releases to make sure that it looks good, and then it's sort of production ready. So that's where we, from a Jira perspective, you say done, don't pull it back, it's done. It's releasable. And how are your DevOps or release management team releases is their problem. And then when you want to do a full integrated testing, that's okay. So that is the DAD. Any questions on that?
Just curious about how you tie together your various stakeholders. So I'm going to make a guess about who the stakeholders are, and then you can correct me. So you have most likely some sales and product people that are the same as one set of stakeholders. You have your architecture team and your developers, all put them together. And then it sounds like you have a separate DevOps team that's responsible for pushing this out to delivery and ultimately making it, function in the real world. So how are you tying together your stakeholders?
It is very hard. So you have to set up these governance structures here very early on, and make sure your stakeholders are empowered. Again, that's not a tool thing, but I can talk to you. And that is, I've run like 2-3-year-old long programs, and I've failed on them. Failure is a great thing because you learn some shit which you will not otherwise. Is to really engage your stakeholders very early on and engage them often. The issue in this new world of Agile versus the stakeholder is stakeholders tend to become command and control very soon. And Agile folks, and most of our newer developers and millennial developers are very attuned to Agile development because that's how they think. So it's a philosophical thing. So you need to make sure your stakeholders from a development perspective have a really good voice. Remember that this is a team thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking so you have a release Jira project, and if I caught it correctly, done means it's releasable. So, are your development teams doing their testing cycles as a part of their release process, and then they push it out to the DevOps team?
So thank you very much.
Or if there's some DevOps problem in that cycle, how does the DevOps team communicate back to your engineering team, and how are you keeping everybody in the loop inside of Jira?
Our DevOps are platform specific. Let me preface that.
Okay.
It is a problem.
Platforms, what are those?
So if I'm doing DevOps on Salesforce platforms,
Yeah.
they understand Salesforce. If I'm doing Oracle, they understand Oracle.
Right.
If I'm doing Java,
Yeah.
so those are the DevOps.
Okay.
We are trying to move to a model of killing QA, not from a quality perspective.
Yeah. Through automation.
Through two things.
Yeah.
Through automation, on some areas we've done that very effectively. On some areas, there's a lot of resistance because our developers don't think of themselves as QA guys because beneath their capability of I didn't join this to be QA. But we are trying to follow an agile method It's team,
Yeah.
guys, this is work for you. Who can do QA? If you are doing development, I'll do your QA. And we're also embedding business teams in that. So we're trying in some advanced teams, we're all over the map, right, obviously. Those teams are all over the map, platforms are all over the map, it's a large company.
Yeah.
So, but I'll just continue. But the problem is that it's a social problem of getting the developers to understand that you should do QA, for our business teams to take responsibility of QA, and for developers themselves to not depend on QA for the writing good code. A lot of developers, old style developers, like, yeah, I'm just going to write code and give it to someone. So testers are testing, developers are using testers to correct their code. And that is one area of the problem which we have solved it in some and we've not in some teams. But DevOps, to gain their efficiency and follow any of these, have to be really frictionless. That's a very big challenge. Sorry, did that answer?
Yeah, no, that answers my question.
So I've got two questions for you. The first one is related to minimum viable product. You mentioned two examples, the Hoover Dam and getting to the moon. Obviously, you kind of have one shot to do these things, or building a plane, you don't want it to fall out of the sky. So where does this fall in with the disciplined agile delivery and waterfall? That's the first question. And then you also mentioned the elimination of QA, and a lot of issues are determined by QA, and things fall out of the happy path, and they don't necessarily get tested, and then they have to get reworked because it wasn't in the original design. So can you speak to those two sort of issues?
Absolutely. I'll speak to your first issue, let the second issue first, QA. How many of us in this room are building critical projects like Hoover Dam or the spaceship or anything? No, serious question.
This is actually a kind of concern for me, because something we talk about with clients is what you consider to be critical, right? And people look at the moon mission and they're like, oh, it's critical. The amount of money that was spent on the moon mission to save the lives of a couple of astronauts was equivalent to what would have saved the lives of tens of thousands of Americans at the same time.
Yeah.
So how you prioritize these things.
So let me speak. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So none of us are working on that criticality of project, thankfully. How many of you are working in life sciences and all those, building artificial kidneys and that kind of project? One. So, but I'll get to you. However, 98 or 99% of the projects we will ever do are not that critical. Thankfully.
High profile.
Even if it is high profile, it's not critical. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, the critical will be that depends on what's critical. For example, if you are a small company, if you think you do some projects,
That's
not
true.
a high profile.
It's high profile. It's high profile. Let me get to you. One second. Let me just finish this and then. So what is important is, in really critical or high profile projects, can you build the budgets? Can you have 40% of your budget for QA? Right? I would say, yeah, maybe. But can you imagine the amount of money you're going to spend on just QA? I'd rather have it done correctly ahead of time. So I'd rather invest in good requirements or stories or high-class developers, which in this world is very hard because we're outsourcing and all that kind of stuff. But that's the cost of doing quality work up front.
Just to add to it, it's not a question. As a former QA lead, it's sort of a myth that only QA people can test. Anyone can test. And life's too short to have people that don't care about making shit songs. Everyone should care about quality.
Yes.
Anyone can test.
Yeah.
And many bugs come from poor process, much more than they come from someone didn't check it after the fact.
Yeah.
If you know that no one's going to check it for you, You need to make sure that you do a good job.
Absolutely. I grew up in the industry where I would die of shame or whatever if QA found defects. I'm like, man, I'm a freaking good programmer. Nobody's gonna find defects in my code. That's how I was brought up in the industry. And so,
Kind of playing devil's advocate there, I mean, I think that people do appreciate like a second view of code. So
Yes.
thus we have like a dev review process where another developer would review at least the quality of the code. But when it comes to like testing and understanding like edge cases, from my perspective, I've seen QA, like a quality QA, cost less than a quality developer. So like why wouldn't I want to spend less money to have the same task done at the same level of quality? When it comes to like reviewing code, I totally understand, but when it comes to like the actual aspect of understanding the edge case and the exact experience, I feel like I would want someone equally as capable that potentially is at lower cost.
so in my opinion, software, one should not think of lower cost. You should think of good software or not good software. And if you bring the cost equation in software, that's when you start getting bad software. And I'd rather invest in peer reviews. We've done away with that kind of stuff. When I used to code every Friday, we threw up our code in front of 30 people, and it's like, come on, check it out. Our programmers need to get balls again. It's like, come on.
That's a good use of your time. I mean, 29 people are reviewing. That's
For a
easy.
Friday afternoon, 1 hour over beers, 20, but my quality of my code will become really better. Rather than what happens, I've seen in the last 15 years, developers tend to give stuff off to QA to correct their code. That's something that I don't think we'll solve here. I want to quickly get to the Jira side because, and this is the last one before I get to Jira. This is the traditional scale, Scrum at scale pattern. And it sort of works, this is the best way to get to scale, in my opinion. Scrum of Scrums, various small teams, then you go back to the patterns, Scrum of Scrums in a pod, Scrum of Scrums, and then Scrum of Scrums is Scrum. This is what Microsoft started in doing, So, and then on the left is various roles and stuff. But when you do this, it's the easiest with Jira you can get on if you're thinking, or if you think you've done too much craziness with Jira and scale, I would recommend that come back to this. It's much easier to manage. It works. It just works very well because it's manageable, and you can break a program, into 5 projects, or 50 projects, or 20 projects, and you can fund Scrum teams that way. And in my opinion, that's if you're thinking of starting to scale, pull back and go here. And for whatever reason, the Scrum Alliance has not sort of propagated this extremely well. And again, the first 2 methods which you see, Agile and Jira are very based on sort of equal playing fields. Teams let them do the best thing themselves. And when you go to the first 2 methods, it becomes very regimented. And the more regimented you make some of these methods, the more it looks the old style waterfall. So if you look at this, even the graphic versus this, look at the graphic, right? And of course, this is sort of the middle ground. But I would say I'm a big proponent of this. Go back to this and do this. And like I said, we ran a program with about 200 different developers playing Jira. Nothing crazy. 1, 2, and I couldn't fit all of these on the screen, right? But I can click and show you. It's all live. They're like, this is sprint 21 happening, which is like literally this afternoon. And about 6 different programs. So 6 different projects are running in this program. And you can see, and we've built these widgets. how much of work is not done. These guys are in the doghouse. 34% scope change, right? Believe me, when I was looking at this, I'm like, I'm going to have a talk with these guys soon. And you can see, in this program, they're following a pretty okay Scrum pattern. This one, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening here. This one, it's like a heartbeat which has gone dead. But this is, and I'll click to just.
How are you collecting the data for those two? Is that with like hours estimates, or are you doing that somehow with story points?
Thank you very much. Somebody asked this question. I hate hours. Hours don't go with sprints and scrums and agile. Don't do hours.
Can you still create this in story points?
Yep. This is all, and I can
I'd love to
flip.
get both and
I
see
can
that.
flip this, or I can show it to you after. Here's what we did to get around. This is a finance project. They all love hours. Our finance teams wants to do everything in hours because hours can respond to dollars and dollars. But we convinced them to so we ran a bunch of sprint zeros. And using the DAD method earlier, we said, based on these sprint zeros, you will go there. And it is this kind of an estimate. Because they're used to that waterfall thinking, right? And then we said, okay, we'll start running our sprints. And sure enough, sprint 3 of one of these programs, I forget exactly which one was it. I think it was the core. And sprint 3, we failed the sprint. I came in, I failed the sprint. And it was crazy. Went up to the controller and stuff like that. And like, why are you failing the sprint? Because it was flatlining like that. And we said, okay, we're going to fail the whole program. And that got all the stakeholders involved, and which was great because 150 people came to a halt. And it's like, okay, let's take a pause for a week and fix this. And that was the only time in last October, around Halloween actually, it was scary. And we failed the sprint and we went live 4 weeks ago. Like it was a non-event, which is good, live, and it's a non-event. So
Yeah, if you fail the sprint, how you can, you just change your estimate at the end of the
no,
sprint?
we failed it. We said we need new stakeholders, we need coverage for this. We went back to doing story point estimation because people were taking 6 story points as 8 hours. In their head, they were doing that crap. We said we're going to do story points in elephants, ants, giraffes, and some other animal. And that we want to break their thinking of hours. And we're like, all of these are story points. So this team has, whatever, 60 story points in their sprint. This one is 70 something. This is 35, whatever. It's all story points each. And, so from a financial perspective, actually SAFE talks about how even financial budgeting you can do with finance. There's a way of doing story points and financial budgeting as well. So if people are interested, I can talk to you about that as well. But so this is like I said, this is like, if I click on this is a live dashboard. Come on. Why is it not showing up? Well, for whatever reason, it's not displaying here. Yeah, there it is. Did it show?
Do right click and maximize the tab.
Let me see.
Are you mirroring the displays or
Yeah.
doing 2 separate displays?
This is why I hate Macs. I mean, PCs, because they never do what they're supposed to do.
you have it on the left, you gotta drag it.
Yeah, I'm
No,
totally
if you go on the
duplicated.
left, copy, I mean, like you're right.
Oh,
You have to drag it.
Hold the Windows key and hit.
there you go. Thank you so much. So as you can see, it's refreshing. I can, literally go in and do whatever I need. It's standard Jira, native, not even a single widget on it. We bought Adaptivist, so that is something which we embedded in, because we have to do good regression testing and stuff like that. So. Question?
For the story points, how you like estimate the time, you see when you're going to do what happen, and how you're going to see, for example, you do fix the release like another 2 weeks. So I don't know what PTC is, for example, we are 2 weeks, how you try to do that.
This is a loaded question. Somebody planted you there. So story points is a very hard concept for anyone who's been developing for more than 3 years to understand. Because in your head, you keep going back to hours. You can tell people, you can bribe them, you can give them alcohol, you can do whatever. Story points. So you have to, I don't know, the way I solved it was to say, guys, we're going to estimate in giraffes, elephants, ants, and things. And it's like, what is an ant? I'm like, so I picked up someone in the crowd and said, what was it, what you developed, which you liked? I like developing this widget. Can you call it ant? Okay. Do others understand if that widget is looking like an ant? Or is like as complex as an ant? Like, yep, so it's an ant. Roughly. Like, okay, what's a giraffe? You tell me what's yours. So a giraffe is a little bigger than that? No, we're not going to do sizes, guys. Okay? Because that's what happens. It's like, oh, what I developed, this I'll call it a giraffe. So it took a bunch of weeks for us to sort of break that mold. And then we went to story points, to Fibonacci actually. We used the modified Fibonacci. And then also people kept coming back, but I think once people sort of understood on the teams, what is a 3 versus a 5, then our biggest problem was splitting stories, and they would go like, oh, this was a 13-point story, it can't be split into 5 plus 5, because it doesn't add up to 13. I'm like, stop adding the shit up. It's 5 and 5. Just don't worry about it. Just deliver what you can get done. And that's very important for developer community to say, what can you get it done? So that there's no defects, nothing, you can get it done. Call it 30. Oh, 30. Okay, that's fine. Now, then we went like, can we split it according to the spider pattern? I was like, yeah, you split it. It's 20 and 5. Or 21 and 5 or whatever it is. So it was a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge doing points, but it's worth it. It's so worth it.
I want to go back into some years around subtasks. I also hate them from like a management and project management standpoint. I feel like they're really meant for the person completing the story themselves to dictate whatever they want to do and however they want to handle that. And that is like a personal thing. I've been on a lot of projects where I've had a lot of pressure to break things out into subtasks, particularly because I don't have any projects that currently have like a Jira portfolio implementation.
You're not using portfolio.
So you're not using portfolio.
Nope.
How are you going about how are you managing that level of hierarchy in your current instance where you have an epic, but you're not necessarily using it as a container, but you do need something that is a container.
We use labels.
That holds multiple epics.
We use labels.
Doing labels.
There's a proliferation of labels because people create their own labels.
Yeah.
But it's.
I've been using a custom field, but to me that still doesn't feel like
I'm
it's
a
building.
big proponent of not customizing even a single. I just went live last year with our $5 million project on Oracle Cloud. I did not even buy the customization SKU, which is called Pass. I had to tell my CIO, we don't have a SQL prompt. this is a new age of living in the cloud. It's like, you gotta stop customizing. We live in New England where we want to customize everything, we think we're special, but. Yeah, go to California, those guys don't customize anything. It's just the cloud thinking. It's the cloud thinking, use what is in the box, use it well till you can really outgrow it. There's so much you can do in the box. It's, use labels. There'll be, it's like there'll be proliferation of labels, right? There'll be like you'll get into creating all JQLs around this and all like no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep it simple. You know. Thorough, live
How
here.
many
It's
teams do
simple.
you have in the program?
Sorry.
How many teams do you have in the program?
In this one program, we had about 8 teams
18.
of about 10. It's not a real scrum team, about 10 people, about
Are those
80.
feature teams or
Sorry?
are those feature teams or cross-function?
Oh, cross-function.
Cross-function.
We gotta embed all business and everyone in one team. That's an agile team. We used to have so much.
They stay
Perfect.
together.
They actually, 3 walls from now, they sit here. We had to relocate people from Germany and Romania and India. And there's a concept in scale and SAFe called PI. So we use parts of that concept of really relocating people here. It was a lot of money, but
Does it work?
oh man,
PI?
oh my gosh. So we modified the PI, and we didn't use the structure of the 3-day and 2 days. We we did parts of it for day 1 and day 2, and then we're like, let's sit together. Split stories, because people were just not thinking through stories. And we spent like hours splitting stories. People would like literally cry. I don't want to do
And you
that.
have IP Sprint or no?
Oh, which thing?
Do you have IP Sprint or no?
IP no. No. Don't like, keep it simple. So this is about the impact on this program is about $1.4 billion. And the cost basis is about 10 million, somewhere in that region. Not small projects by any chance. So,
Give it up for Ankur!
thanks for coming.